Hello everyone, welcome back to the Topical Hour. Today we're going to be rapidly reviewing Spider-Man Miles Morales. Honestly, I've thought for a long time about reviewing the original Spider-Man that this game came from, the one from 2018, but I feel like everyone's talked about that game. I mean, it was definitely one of the most hyped games of all time, at least, and probably the most hyped game of 2018, along with God of War and Red Dead 2. That said, that game has been reviewed more times than I care to count, so we're going to go with a more nonchalant review of this game, which didn't splash quite as hard. I think a big reason for this, or really the reason, is because this game was originally meant to be DLC to the original. But as they added more elements to the story, more combat mechanics, and more dialogue, I guess they realized that it would be better as a full game rather than an add-on. However, if you go in without knowing this information, you will genuinely be shocked with how short this game is. Like, the end of this game is more like the halfway point of the first. And I actually think that this could be taken as either a flaw or a benefit, depending on how you look at it. If you added a ton of Miles or Ganke missions, you could have a pretty easy and extremely tedious extra 3 hours. Also, this game is paced pretty well, but I'll save that for the story segment. But for now, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this game. The gameplay. The gameplay is probably the better part of this game. It really takes the foundation from the original and makes it a lot better. Sure, there are a lot less gadgets, but why would someone who just became Spider-Man even need more gadgets? Especially someone with lightning powers. Also, the skill tree has been noticeably nerfed, but I really like that you can gain skills from the previous game by doing missions set up by Peter. It's cool, not only story-wise, but it feels good to have some of the abilities in the old game, especially from a travel perspective. The combat in this game is actually better than the old one in some ways. The animations feel styled to Miles specifically, so you don't rely so heavily on gadgets. The boss fights, while there aren't many, are still better than the originals. Also, and again, it may be because I played on Ultimate, but this game feels slightly more challenging when it comes to combat. However, I played a ton of Spider-Man 2018 and leveled up a bunch, so I have over 250 health on that game, and I have about half of that in this game because I just got it a few months ago, so it might just be me. Next, we have story. The story of this game is solid at times and shaky at others. First off, the pacing of this game isn't perfect, but I do like that reveals are downplayed hard and there aren't many stupid twists. I deduced that Phin would be the main antagonist when she fixed Miles' doorbell. It wasn't difficult, but then an hour later Miles finds out too. This is a good way to not treat your audience like they're dumb. I also like that Prowler finds out about Miles' identity almost immediately. It's a cool way to acknowledge that Miles' voice is pretty unique and he was asking way too many personal questions. But into the plot of this game, there's basically a MacGuffin called Nuform that makes people sick when they work on it or get near it. Miles' best friend Phin, who he hasn't seen in a long time, had a relative who died trying to shut down the development of Nuform. The secondary antagonist, Simon Krieger, killed him. Phin's mission is to basically get revenge, but also to stop Krieger in general. Meanwhile, we have Miles trying to become his own Spider-Man now that Peter's on vacation for a while. His other best friend, Ganke, stays at his house through winter break to set up an app that people can use it to contact Spider-Man for help. The story is mostly just all of this happening, with Prowler also helping Miles in the background. I'd also just like to mention it here, but I really like that Prowler doesn't die. I mean, yeah, I know he dies in some of the other media, but imagine if his dad, his best friend, and his uncle died in the span of a few months. That's dumb. Thank you for not doing that, Insomniac. Moving on, Phin dies at the end of this game as a result of Miles absorbing too much Nuform. She sacrifices herself, seeing that people are rushing towards Miles to help him, and gets them both to a safe distance in the sky before he explodes in her face. So this villain definitely had a few flaws. I can't imagine ever being so distraught that I wouldn't listen to my best friend from childhood tell me not to do something dangerous. Also, the tech that she produces for her little crew, the Underground, is world-changing weaponry. If this happened in real life, the National Guard would be in New York, not Spider-Man. But this is a superhero game, so I give it a pass. Also, I wish we could side a bit more with Phin. Every time I saw her in a scene, her dialogue would always make me wonder how she was ever normal before the events of this game. Seriously, she flips to the dark side faster than Anakin Skywalker. I guess I just wish that Phin was a bit more like Prowler in that she's doing the right thing for the wrong reason, but by the time we get to the end of the story, she's just doing the wrong thing in general. However, I do think that Rhino gets a pretty cool comeback, and it caps off Miles' rivalry with him. I think this is a pretty good time to address some of the side characters, because it needs to be done for me to be happy. First off is Ganke. I didn't really think Ganke got enough to do in this game. I wish they felt more like buddies. And some generic quotes when doing the friendly neighborhood missions don't count in that regard. Also, it's kind of comical how good Ganke is with technology. He hacks into things faster than most media characters I've ever seen. Simon Krieger is pretty generic as well. I just wish he didn't have mustache-twirling villain written all over his face. I mean, you know exactly who this guy is the moment you see him in that cutscene towards the beginning of the game. Also, this is a bit of a tangent, but why does Rhino... Towards the end of the game, when you fight Rhino in his venom-proof armor and defeat him, Miles asks Phin to guard him and make sure he doesn't do anything, and then he starts provoking her. Why would Rhino ever do this? Like, according to the last game, he's stuck in this suit and he doesn't even really enjoy being a villain. Why would he try to get Finn to kill him? That makes no sense. Also, maybe I missed something, but it's never confirmed if Rhino dies. Like, Finn stabs him and then Miles stops her, and then he's never talked about again. This game doesn't have the best villains, but somehow, against all rhyme and reason, they made Prowler, a villain who we'd seen 2 years before, the best character in the game. That don't make no sense. I really like that they took the Prowler and basically continued his story from Into the Spider-Verse. Like, now that Prowler knows his nephew is Spider-Man, which again, I really like that he got it quickly, obviously he'd try to protect him from people like Finn and Krieger. I also think that the Prowler boss fight is probably the best in the game. If you play it on Ultimate, it's definitely the hardest, and it just feels fun to listen to Prowler and Miles argue about what's morally right and wrong when it comes to saving the city and the other responsibilities of being Spider-Man. Another cool thing about this game, Spider-Man himself. I guess that the whole point of this game is to show that Miles Morales is Spider-Man alongside Peter Parker. I mean, the game literally ends with people claiming that Miles Morales is their Spider-Man, which I do like that. I mean, even the subtitles just label him as Spider-Man, like Peter from the first game. There are also pretty obvious themes of race and what it's like to live in Harlem and how the people above it don't actually care if it's destroyed. I think these themes are done okay, I just wish they were a bit more subtle, that's all. Like, some of these themes are literally said out loud. It's okay, but it could be better. All in all, I just think that this game is too short. It doesn't have the time to flesh out the relationships between Miles and his friends or Miles and his uncle. I still think that Prowler is the best side character in the game. He's the only one I actually feel things for, and I was constantly wondering when he was going to die. There was so little content in this game that not only was I genuinely startled when the game warned me at the no turning back point, but there are also very few unlockable suits in this game, at least compared to the first. So the good suits in this game are really, really good, but the bad ones are just boring, and there's definitely more bad than good. And judging from the amount of side missions and extra content in this game, it feels like the devs just ran out of storyline to form the game around, so they spent the rest of their time just adding little things to the game. Like the new special animation takedowns for their respective suits, or the Kingpin storyline, which... Actually, I don't know why Kingpin is in this game. I'd guess that they still had his character model from the beginning of the first game and felt like using it. Also, I wish this game had more of a focus on Miles maybe doing things better than Peter. Peter, at least in the games, isn't the type to get jealous, so it'd be a lot more compelling if Miles felt more restricted around Peter and maybe found a better way to save the city than Peter could think of. Like, if you think about it, there's no reason for Miles to mess up Rhino's transport in the beginning of the game. What if we had Peter mess it up instead, and it just shows that a big part of being Spider-Man is messing up sometimes, even when you're a veteran? That would be way cooler than just seeing Miles mess up and Peter dealing with the consequences. It would set them more as equals in the end, especially if Peter suggested Miles do something in the end, and then Miles finds his own way to save everyone, heavily illustrating that he is his own Spider-Man. I'm not saying I could write these games better, but it's also important to note that I got this game on PS4, and even on last gen, the load times on this game are a huge improvement over the last game. Like, there are times playing the first game where I'll take out my phone whenever I press continue on the main menu. I tried to do that the second or third time I played this game, and it actually shocked me when it loaded a few seconds later. Also, I don't talk about music on this channel very often, but the soundtracks for Prowler's fight and the Tinkerer's final fight are pretty awesome. Like, this game's music could never top the originals, but it holds its own pretty well though. I like the rhythms and the beats and the obvious influence of different types of music compared to the more heroic or brave themes of the original game, but I still like the original's main theme and the Doc Ock boss fight enough to claim that they're better than this game's music. Also, one little pet peeve I had in the first game was that the music when swinging didn't blend into the silence of standing still, so anytime I jumped and started swinging, the heroic music would come out of nowhere and wouldn't stop until I landed again. It was done way better in this game, it just blends better, and I think it feels more suited to this game than the swinging felt suited to the last game. Anyway, this is getting a bit long for a rapid review, and I've been rambling on for a few minutes about little nitpicks that don't actually matter, so when I give the game an overall score, it gets a 6.5 out of 10. Everything wrong with this game really just lies in the story. It has a ton of potential and really good themes, but the execution simply wasn't on the same level as the first. Also, the deaf woman teased as Miles' new love interest. I said the moment I saw her that Miles shouldn't even bother with Finn. The deaf woman's nice, and Miles already knows ASL, so if they're not together in the next game, we're gonna have an issue, Insomniac. Also, regular viewers of the channel have probably noticed that I didn't put a number score at the beginning of the video and saved it for the end, and the truth is, I kinda forgot. But also, I think it's a necessary change. I'd rather have you go through the video and hear my points and then come up with a logical conclusion than just give you a number and go backwards in explaining how I got there, so maybe just take that change with a grain of salt. Anyway guys, this video took me a while to make, and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to give me that sweet, warm, sticky satisfaction. And you know what? I'll remind you guys to leave a like and comment too, because somehow you keep forgetting to do that. Or not, that's fine. Play nice, people.